Major sponsors for Ableton On Air include Washington County Mental Health, where hope and support come together. Media sponsors for Ableton On Air include Parkchester Times, Muslim Community Report, www.thisisthebronx.info, Associated Press Media Editors, New York Parrot Online Newspaper, U.S. Press Corps Domestic and International, Anchor FM, and Spotify. Partners for Ableton On Air include Jihad of New York and New England, where everyone belongs, the Orthodox Union, the Division for the Blind and Visually Impaired of Vermont, the Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, Central Vermont Habitat for Humanity, Montefiore Medical Center of the Bronx, Rose F. Kennedy Center of Bronx, New York, Albert Einstein College of Medicine of the Bronx. Ableton On Air has been seen in the following publications: Parkchester Times, www.thisisthebronx.com, New York Parrot Online Newspaper, Muslim Community Report, www.h.com, and the Montpelier Bridge. Ableton On Air is part of the following organizations: the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, Boston, New England chapter, and the Society of Professional Journalists. Coming up on this edition of Ableton On Air, we talk about socialism and people with disabilities. All that and much more when Ableton On Air starts right now. Welcome to this edition of Ableton On Air, the one and only program that focuses on the needs, concerns, and achievements of the differently able. I'm your host, Lawrence Seiler. We would like to thank the following partners and sponsors of Ableton On Air: the Association for the Blind Vermont, the Division for the Blind Vermont, and many others, including the Muslim Media Corporation of Bronx, New York. Let's begin this program on socialism and people with disabilities. I'm going to talk about a prominent figure in socialism in the 1950s. Her name was Eva Perron and the Perron family. Maria Eva Duarte de Perron, she was born May 7th, 1919, and she passed away July 1952. Best known as Eva Perron, or the nickname Evita, was the First Lady of Argentina from June 1948 until her death in July 1952, and is the wife of Argentinian President Juan Perón. She was born in poverty in the rural village of Los Todos in the Pampas part of Argentina, and the youngest of 5 children. In 1934, at the age of 15, she moved to the nation's capital of Buenos Aires to pursue a career in stage, radio, and film. She married Perron in 1945 and was still when he was still an Army colonel, and and was propelled onto the political stage, and she became president in 1946. She became a central figure of Peronism. When he became president in 1946, she became a central figure of Peronism and in Argentinian culture because of the Eva Perron Foundation, a charitable organization perceived by many Americans as highly impactful. She met Colonel Juan Perron on January 22nd, 1944, during a charity event in Luna Park Stadium to benefit the victims of an earthquake of San Juan, Argentina. The two were married the following year. Juan Perón was elected president of Argentina in 1946, and during the next 6 years, Eva Perón became powerful within the pro-Peronist trade union, primarily for speaking on behalf of labor rights. She also ran the Ministries of Labor and Health, and founded and ran the charitable Eva Perón Foundation, and championed women's suffrage in Argentina, and founded and ran the First Nations large-scale female political party, the Female Peronist Party. In 1951, Eva Perón announced her candidacy for the Peronist nomination for the office of Vice President of Argentina, receiving great support from the Peronist political base. Low-income and working-class Argentinians were referred to as desmatados, or shirtless ones, similar to the term sans-culottes. During the French Revolution, opposition from the nation's military, and coupled with her declining health, ultimately forced her to withdraw her candidacy. In 1952, shortly before her death from cancer, at 33, Eva Perón was given the title of spiritual leader of the nation of Argentina by the Argentinian Congress. She was given a state funeral upon her death, a prerogative generally reserved for heads of state. Eva Perón became part of international popular culture, most famously as the subject of a musical, EVITA, in 1976, and Cristina Olivares Rodriguez said that Eva Perón has never left the collective consciousness of Argentinians. And the second female president of Argentina, Cristina Fernandez, said, claims that women of her generation owe a debt to Eva Perón. For example, passion and combativeness. Eva Perón's 1951 biography, La Razón de mi vida, contains no dates and references to the childhood occurrences, and did not list the location of her birth and name of her birth. According to the civil registry and birth certificate that shows Maria Eva Duarte was born on May 7th, 1919. Her baptismal certificate lists the date of birth as May 7th, 1919, under the name Eva Maria, can't pronounce that, sorry. And it is thought that in 1945, the adult Eva Perón created the forgery of her birth certificate for her marriage. Eva Perón spent her childhood in Buenos Aires province. Her father, Juan Duarte, 1872 to 1926, was descended from French, Basque, and Spanish Basque immigrants. Juan Duarte was a wealthy rancher from nearby Chivilcoy and had already had a wife, and family there. At the time of rural Argentina, it was not uncommon for a wealthy man to have several families. When Perron was a year old, Duarte returned permanently to his legal family, leaving the mother and her children in abject poverty, and they were forced to move in the poorest area of JUAN, Los Todos, a village in the dusty region of Las Pampas, with reputation of a desolate place of poverty to support himself and her children. The family was stigmatized by the abandonment of the father and by the illegitimate status of the children under Argentinian law, and was consequently somewhat isolated. A desire to expunge this part of her life might have been a motivation for Perron to arrange the destruction of the original birth certificate in 1945. When Duarte suddenly died, their children sought to attend his funeral, but there was conflict. Although the children were permitted to enter and pay respects, they were promptly directed out of the church. Duarte's widow did not want her late husband's mistress and children at the funeral, and she was the illegitimate wife. Her orders were respected. In her autobiography, Eva explained to all the people, all the town had been to the big city. Hold on. In her autobiography, Eva explained that all the people from her town have been to the big cities, described to them as marvelous places, but nothing was given but wealth. In 1934, at 15, Eva escaped her poverty-stricken village, and she ran off with a young musician to the nation's capital of Buenos Aires. The young couple's relationship ended quickly, but Eva remained in Buenos Aires and began to pursue jobs on stage and the radio, and eventually became a film actress. She bleached her naturally black hair, a look she maintained for the rest of her life. It was often reported that Eva traveled back to Buenos Aires by train with the tango singer Austin Magaldi. However, there was no record of the married Magaldi and performing in 1934, and even if he had done so, he usually traveled with his wife. Eva's sisters maintained Eva traveled to Buenos Aires with their mother. The sisters claim that Donna Juana accompanied the daughter to the audition and the radio station, and arranged for Eva to live with the family and were friends of the Duarte family. While the method of Eva's escape from provincial surroundings is debated, she did begin a new life in Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires in the 1930s was known as the Paris of South America. The center of the city had many cafes, restaurants, theaters, movie houses, shops, and bustling crowds. In direct contrast, in the 1930s, it was also a year of great unemployment, poverty, hunger in the capital, and many arrivals from the interior were forced to live in tenements, boarding houses, and outlying shanties. Became known as Villas Miserables, which means miserable in village of the miserable in Spanish. Upon arrival in Buenos Aires, Eva Duarte was faced with many difficulties of surviving without formal education and connections. The city was especially overcrowded by this period because of the migrations caused by the Great Depression. On the 28th of March 1935, she made her professional debut in the play Mrs. Perez, La Señora de Perez, in the Comidas Theater, in the Comedy Theater. In 1936, Eva toured nationally a theater company and worked as a model and was cast in a few B-grade movies. Let's move down here. As a result of her success with radio, dramas, and film, Eva achieved some financial stability in 1942 and was able to move into an apartment in the exclusive neighborhood of Recoleta on 1557 Calle Podestas, currently the site of the Hotel Recoleta Plaza. The next year, Eva began her career in politics as one of the founders of Argentine Radio Syndicate, ARA. Moving down to their relationship, and it's really based also on the film and the play. On the 15th of January 1944, an earthquake occurred in the town of San Juan, Argentina, killing 10,000 people. In response, Juan Perron, who was then Secretary of Labor, established a fund to raise money to aid the victims. He devised a plan to have an artistic festival as a fundraiser and invited radio, film, and film actors to participate. After a week of fundraising, all participants met at a gala held in Luna Park Stadium in Buenos Aires on January 22nd, 1944, to benefit earthquake victims. At the gala, Eva Duarte met Colonel Juan Perron. Eva promptly began to be Perron's girlfriend. She referred to the day and met him, and it was a marvelous day. Juan Perron and Eva left the gala together around 2 in the morning. Perron's first wife had died from uterine cancer in 1938. Eva Duarte had no knowledge or her interest in politics prior to meeting Juan Perron. Therefore, she never argued with Perron or any of his inner circle, but merely absorbed what she heard. Juan Perron later claimed in his memoir that he purposely selected EVITA as his pupil and set out to create her in his second inner circle because of his age. He was 48 and was 24 when they met. He had come to politics later in life and therefore free of preconceived ideas of how his political career would have been conducted. He was willing to accept whatever she offered him. In May 1944, she was announced that broadcast performers would organize them into union, and that this union would be the only one permitted to operate in Argentina. Shortly after the formation of the union, Eva Duarte was elected president. Eva Duarte was elected its president. Juan Perron had made the suggestion that the performers created a union, and other performers felt like it was good politics to elect his mistress. Shortly after the election, as president of the union, Eva Duarte began a daily program toward a better future, which was dramatized in a soap opera form. The accomplishments of Juan Perron often the accomplishments of Juan Perron. Often, Perron's speeches were played during the program. When she spoke, Eva Duarte spoke the ordinary language of a regular woman. Perhaps she wanted listeners to believe that she herself believed about Juan Perron. By the early 40s, a group of Army officers called the JOU. This is about the arrest of Juan Perron. By the early 1940s, a group of Army officers called the JOU for Grupo de Oficiales Unidos, a United Officers Group, nicknamed the Colonels, had gained considerable influences within the Argentina government. President Pablo Ramirez became wary of Perron's growing power within the government and was unable to curb that power. On the 24th of February 1944, Ramirez signed his own resignation paper and was drafted by Juan Perron himself. A friend of Juan Perron became president, and Juan Perron returned to his job as labor minister. At which point was the most powerful. He was the most powerful man of Argentinian government. On October 9th, 1945, Juan Perron was arrested by his opponents within the government who feared that with the strong support. Juan Perron. On October 9th, 1944, Juan Perron was arrested by his opponents and the governments who feared that the strong support of his base, largely skilled unionized workers that had recently moved from rural areas, industrialized urban centers, and several trade unions. Perron would attempt to grab power. 6 days later, between 250,000 and 350,000 people gathered in front of Casa Rosada, Argentina's government house, and demanded Juan Perron's release. At 11 p.m. that evening, Juan Perron stepped onto the balcony of Casa Rosada and addressed the crowd. Biographer Robert D. Craswell claimed that the moment particularly powerful because it dramatically recalled the important aspects of the Argentina history. Krasweiler writes that Juan Perron was enacted by the role of the CAUDILLO, addressing his people in the tradition of Argentinian leaders, Rosas and Eugene. Krasweiler also claimed that evening contained mystic overtones and quasi-religious natures. And the last thing, on October 18th, 1945, a day after he was released, Perron and Eva married discreetly in a civil ceremony in Junin, a church wedding that was held on December 9th, 1945 in La Plata, in the modern day of La Plata, in the modern day. October 17th is still celebrated as a holiday by the Justice Party, celebrated in Dia de Lealtad, or Loyalty Day. And the main last thing, in 1946, after his release from prison, Juan Perron decided to campaign for the presidency of the nation and won 54%. Eva Perron campaigned heavily for the husband during the 1946 presidential bid. Using her weekly radio show, she delivered speeches within the heavy populist rhetoric, urging the poor to align themselves with Juan Perron's movement. So this with this show today, we talked about the socialist career of Eva Perron and her husband. This has been Able Then On Air. If you want to find out more about what you've seen today on Able Then On Air, you can go to www.orcamedia.net. I'm Lawrence Seiler. See you next time on the next edition of Able Then On Air. Major sponsors for Able Then On Air include Washington County Mental Health, where hope and support come together. Media sponsors for Able Then On Air include Parkchester Times, Muslim Community Report, www.thisisthebronx.info, Associated Press Media Editors, New York Parrot Online Newspaper, U.S. Press Corps Domestic and International, Anchor FM, and Spotify. Partners for Able Then On Air include Jihad of New York and New England, where everyone belongs, the Orthodox Union, the Division for the Blind and Visually Impaired of Vermont, the Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, Central Vermont Habitat for Humanity, Montefiore Medical Center of the Bronx, Rose F. Kennedy Center of Bronx, New York, Albert Einstein College of Medicine of the Bronx. Able Then On Air has been seen in the following publications: Parkchester Times, www.thisisthebronx.com, New York Pirate Online Newspaper, Muslim Community Report, www.h.com, and the Montpelier Bridge. Ableton On Air is part of the following organizations: the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, Boston, New England chapter, and the Society of Professional Journalists.